This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform for building a website and running your online business. Unlike some of the directors who have covered in this series that have undergone large changes in their shooting budgets, Wes Anderson as a director has seen some more minor, incremental changes in his films around the medium budget range. Like the incremental changes in budget, his directing style has also changed incrementally over his filmography. However, it has been bound since day one by common stylistic traits which make all of Anderson's films easily identifiable. His movies are fast-paced comedies punctuated by melancholic moments, deadpan performances, symmetrical compositions, a limited color palette with themes of family dysfunction, unlikely friendships, parental abandonment, and loss of innocence, which unfold in their own uniquely contained world, almost like a fable. In this episode, I'll dive into 3 films by Wes Anderson: Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and The Grand Budapest Hotel, which he shot at 3 increasing budget levels, to uncover the similarities between them and how his career and style as an auteur has progressed over time.
I don't know, it's odd that it's a movie where some people really do like it quite a lot, and so many others really hate it. But I do find that I've managed to keep a consistent run of that, just that kind of response.
After graduating in 1990, Anderson and Owen Wilson decided to write and shoot their own black and white short film called Bottle Rocket. They convinced indie producer Cynthia Hargrave to fund their $4,000 short. Due to their inexperience in producing, they ran out of money after shooting 8 minutes worth of footage. However, those 8 minutes were enough to secure the additional funding to finish the 13-minute short. The final film managed to get into Sundance Film Festival in 1994, where Anderson and Wilson also attended their lab. A family friend of the Wilson family, whose 3 brothers starred in the short, managed to get a copy of the film as well as the script for the feature-length version to producer Polly Platt. Platt organized for James L. Brooks, an executive producer with his company Gracie Films, to visit Anderson and the Wilson brothers. At the time, they were all living together.
Jim Brooks is coming here. I was like, so when do we were living in Dallas. I said, well, so we're gonna go get him at the airport. And they were like, no, he's coming here to where we lived. And we lived in this place was a hovel. It was really squalid place. And in fact, I got double pink eye one time during the winter, staying there with Owen and Luke. And I think Wes might have been in one of the rooms, or might have been even in the same room with us. We were all sleeping in the same room for warmth.
Like their living situation, the film was the product of a close-knit group of family and friends. At the time, Brooks had a deal with Columbia Pictures to finance a low-budget film of his choice, and after reading their script, he liked it so much he decided that low-budget film should be Bottle Rocket. Like with all his films, Anderson had a unique vision for how it should be made and sought to clarify his vision in pre-production. He got a pinboard and created a huge collage of images, which represented the color palette of the film sets. Going in, he knew how he wanted to frame the movie, but he didn't know how it should be lit. To execute his film visually and light it, he turned to cinematographer Robert Yeoman. Anderson tracked down Yeoman's address and sent a personal letter along with an enclosed script, which he loved. When they met in person, they immediately creatively clicked. They hired a small cast and crew and tried to create a family atmosphere during production. Although he had a clear vision for the film, Anderson and the Wilsons had to come to grips with the technical process along the way.
When we started the movie, Owen and I didn't know what a focus puller was, and so there was, the camera and the camera operator, and then Wes and the sound guy. And then there was this guy, John Boccaccio, who, had the focus right here, and he sat right beside the camera, and he just had this kind of poker face. And after about the second day, Owen and I were like, this guy hates us.
Yeoman photographed the film in 35mm color on a Panavision camera with spherical Primo lenses. They decided to shoot the whole film on a 27mm lens. When the producers caught wind of that, they tried to put a stop to it, so Yeoman got his AC to change up the lenses on the camera report which they handed into production. 15mm here, 100mm there, even though they actually used the 27mm for the whole movie. Once completed, to their dismay, Sundance rejected the film. It was a commercial failure and struggled to find an audience. However, it received critical acclaim from reviewers and, over the years, attained a cult status. Anderson used the low $5 million budget to create Bottle Rocket using 35mm color film, a small cast and crew, and a contained story, which featured early signs that hinted at the emergence of his trademark style. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you want to build a career as a cinematographer or a director, it's a must to have a portfolio of your work online. Squarespace provides the tools to easily build and manage your website or online store. Setting up a site on Squarespace is intuitive. It guides you down the path of beautiful design, making the process of creating an aesthetically pleasing space for your work simple. Their sleek portfolio layouts allow you to create a professional-looking display of your creative work by including customizable galleries. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/indepthcine to save 10% of your first purchase of a website or domain. Years before Bottle Rocket was made, Anderson and Wilson had already started writing Rushmore based on their own school experiences, with Wilson being expelled from an elite private school and Anderson sharing the lead character's motivation, lack of academic interest, and a crush on an older woman. After initial talks to produce the film with New Line Cinema fell through due to a disagreement on budget, Anderson, Wilson, and producer Barry Mendel held an auction for the film's rights in mid-1997 and struck a deal with Joe Roth of Walt Disney Studios. They came up with a budget of $10 million, a step up from his initial film, into the medium budget range. Anderson wrote the role of Mr. Bloom specifically for Bill Murray, but doubted they would be able to get him on board. However, Murray's agent had seen and enjoyed Bottle Rocket, and got Murray to read the script for Rushmore. After reading and connecting with the script, Murray agreed to come on, and even to work for scale, which is the minimum wage that actors need to be paid, stipulated by the Screen Actors Guild. The total cost of his rate was around $9,000, a tiny fraction of what he would usually be paid for such a role. With only 1 month to go before production began, they were still without their lead actor for Max. On the last day of casting, they found Jason Schwartzman, who had been introduced to the casting director at a party as a cousin of filmmaker Sofia Coppola. Anderson was then faced with the task of finding the main school location.
Then we searched all over the place. We did the same thing we did search for Max. We looked at schools all over the country, all over Canada, and all over England. Then my mother sent me pictures of my school, and I realized that's what I was trying to find all over those places. I was trying to find one like that.
To prepare for the film, Anderson drew basic storyboards by hand. Some storyboards were almost a shot-for-shot identical match with the final cut, whereas other storyboard frames changed on set during shooting as the location and actors' blocking sparked new ideas. He again teamed up with Yeoman to photograph Rushmore. This time they had more money, a larger canvas, Bill Murray, and Anderson had more experience in film production. He built on the visual style of Bottle Rocket by including symmetrical frames, a contained color palette, top-down close-ups, handmade production design, and flat space camera moves. This is where the camera moves directly forwards, backwards, up, or down, as opposed to the more standard method of moving the camera across at an angle. They also incorporated new camera techniques such as zooms and whip pans. To execute these moves, Yeoman used a dolly for most of the film, with a fluid head, that allowed him to move the camera with enough speed to do the whip pans. For vertical up and down movement, he used a crane. These custom shots and intricate moves were often more challenging and difficult to shoot than just relying on regular coverage, but they built in a visual language which supported the whimsical, fable-like world of the story. This time Yeoman shot with anamorphic glass, again with his preferred Panavision setup. He used the Panavision Primo anamorphic lenses on the Platinum. Like on Bottle Rocket, they maintained a wide field of view by sticking to the 40mm anamorphic lens for around 95% of the shoot. A 40mm anamorphic lens is very wide, and has a field of view somewhere close to a 20mm spherical lens in Super 35. Another creative flourish Anderson employed was using the month name titles to structure the film on curtains by using a slide projector with a xenon bulb. Using curtains to bookend scenes also added to the theatrical nature of the film. Yeoman mainly lit the film using Kino flows, HMIs, and lots of light modification using flags, diffusion, negative fill, and nets to shape the light. For a shot where Bill Murray jumps into the pool, Yeoman opted to shoot it at night, using strong light sources. Underwater shots require lots of strong directional lighting in order to get a clear image. If using natural light and the sky is overcast, it may look murky underwater. So they cut from shooting the above the water scene in daylight to shooting the underwater shot night for day. Anderson truly found himself as a director on Rushmore, and used the larger $10 million budget to create a more expansive cinematic world, with more expensive locations and production design, a popular music soundtrack, a moderate scope story, using more elaborate technical gear, and a star. After a string of successful and original films which continued to build on Anderson's unique style, he embarked on making The Grand Budapest Hotel. The initial idea for the film was conceived in 2006 when Anderson and Hugo Guinness wrote an 18-page story draft. Anderson became fascinated with the work of Austrian novelist Stefan Zweig, especially his pre-World War II novels such as Beware of Pity and The World of Yesterday. He used this as inspiration for creating an historical pastiche which took a more disillusioned approach to pre-World War II European history. With a larger estimated budget of $25 million, Anderson was able to cast a troupe of well-known actors, many of whom he'd worked with previously. Once again he paired up with Yeoman for their 7th feature film together. The pair scouted possible shooting locations across Europe, before eventually deciding on Eastern Germany, due to its combination of easy logistics and ideal locations. The production design team were tasked with transforming a former department store into the main hotel lobby location. While scouting, they would sometimes bring along a camera to work out scenes, with crew members tasked to stand in for actors. Since locations feed so heavily into Anderson's films, he and Yeoman used these scouts to work out the scenes as much as possible. Like on his prior films, storyboards were created which were then edited into an animatic. Visually, they drew on a bunch of references, from films to books to old colorized photos. To delineate the 3 different time periods, Anderson used different aspect ratios that were popular photographic formats for each time period. The Squarer Academy 1.37 for the 1930 scenes, widescreen 2.40 anamorphic for the 1960s, and 1.85 for the 1980s. This time Yeoman shot in the Arri system, with a single Arri Cam ST, paired with spherical Cooke S4s and an Angenieux Optimo 24-290 zoom for the 1930s and 80s, and Technovision Cooke anamorphics for the vintage 1960s look. Again, he used mainly wider focal lengths which distorted more around the edges, such as the 40mm Technovision anamorphic. Along with the aspect ratios, Yeoman also used light to differentiate the time periods. For the 1930 scenes in the hotel lobby, he bounced 20 4K HMIs, or frames, on top of the roof through the skylight window. This produced a soft, gentle ambience. The lobby was then punctuated with tungsten practicals which gave the 1930s space a warm, inviting feeling. Then for the 1960s scenes, which take place after the Eastern Bloc communist era takeover, his production designer created a fake ceiling, which could be lowered to block out all the soft ambient light from the skylight. Then, as was common in post-communism 1960s Europe, he lit the space to invoke the feeling of fluorescent overhead fixtures. To do this, his team rigged 24 12-light maxi brutes shining through a layer of 216 diffusion, which covered the ceiling. This light feels subtly harsher and more oppressive than the gentle, warm ambience of the 1930s when the hotel was in its prime. All the lights were put on dimmers. He usually lit to a T3.5 stop, but for zoom shots on the older Technocook anamorphic 40 to 200mm, he lit to T8, because the lens looks soft if it's not shot at a deeper stop. Yeoman also referenced the dramatic lighting changes that Vittorio Storaro used in One from the Heart. To emphasize and punctuate certain emotional moments, he would use the dimmers to fade the lights up or down during the take. As always, Anderson and Yeoman shot on film, this time Kodak Vision 3 200 tungsten, without using an 85 color balance filter for exteriors, and got the lab to do the basic color balance in post instead. The larger budget of the Grand Budapest Hotel accommodated a range of well-known actors in a more expansive story with more complex sequences, larger production design builds, and big lighting setups. As he matured as a director, Wes Anderson carried certain trademark features across his films and built his style into one which is easily identifiable at just a glance. With each film he made, his style became more and more pronounced. By crafting his stories piece by piece with individual storyboarded shots, rather than through conventional coverage, Anderson builds up a visual world for his stories which sucks in the audience. Whether you like or dislike his films, one thing that can't be denied is that he is a wholly original and unique voice in the world of cinema. Thanks for getting to the end of this episode. Please check out the new merch that I've launched by clicking the link in the description, which has amazing original illustrations specifically for people who love film. Otherwise, until next time, thanks for watching and goodbye.